Hello, welcome to another episode of Varsity360. I'm Columbian sports editor Micah Rice, joined today by both Tim Martinez and Will Denner, and we are here to break down our 5 takeaways from the just completed fall 2024 season in Southwest Washington high school sports. As always, we're coming to you from the First Pacific Financial Studio in downtown Vancouver. Thanks to them for their support of this show going all the way back to last year and being such loyal partners for the community that they are. Boy, there's a lot that we can take away from the recently completed fall season. We are here to break down some of those when it comes to football, an interesting take with volleyball and soccer, and but first of all, let's just talk in a macro level. What's maybe one of the top memories each of you has for the fall 2024 season?
Sure. I think kind of off the beaten path a little bit. I'll throw in slow pitch softball into the ring and Skyview beating Union for the first time in a few years to get to the state tournament, district championship series that they trailed in both games and ultimately were able to beat their rivals to get to the state championship. That was a cool memory and just cool to get out and see some slow pitch softball. All right.
I'm also going to go off the beaten path with my memory. My memory goes all the way back to week 1 when it was 95 degrees. It feels like a distant memory now, but was out watching Heritage break a 2-year losing streak against Fort. The excitement that day with the Heritage players, it was just cool to be around. They went on to win 3 games this year, and they're doing good things. They're building some good numbers and building some good things, and so it was good to see those kids after having not experienced a win since their freshman year, and the younger kids never having had a varsity win. It was cool to see that, and good to see that they're taking a step in the right direction.
I think what I'm going to remember is kind of sort of how people are coming together around high school sports, and especially around what we do on our social medias and what we do with this show. I remember going into to exercise at one of the athletic clubs, and a high school age kid goes like, 360 preps? I was like, yeah.
We work out?
yeah, well, sort of. but anyway, I just think what sticks out to me is kind of the appreciation that the community has for high school sports, and how we can play a part in that, and certainly do our best to share these stories. But let's get right into it. And I think the first takeaway that we'll get to for the high school sports season is one of the more recent developments, and that is Camas being a part of just an epic Class 4A state championship football game. I think one of the takeaways that I'll have is that Camas will continue to have success at a statewide level well into the future. I think a lot of that has to do with Adam Matheson's proven track record of getting the most out of players. He did that consistently at Mountain View. He did that with a young offensive line and a good quarterback in Jake Davidson that he turned into an all-time Camas record-setting quarterback. But before we go into the takeaways, just Will, you were there at Husky Stadium on Saturday. Just take us through that game, that atmosphere, and just what a spectacle that was.
Yeah, incredible atmosphere, and I think a game that a lot of people were looking forward to all weekend. It seemed like a really evenly matched 2 teams, and it really lived up to the hype. Back and forth game. Camas was challenged by their defense early, but they kind of opened up in the second half. They got Chase McGee going. They got some big catches from Nico Spear. Had a huge goal line stand near the end of the third quarter that at the time seemed like that might have helped them kind of get over the hump. But then Sumner has a really gutsy fake punt call on their last drive. That ends up kind of getting them into field goal range, and then they walk it off with a game-winning field goal as time expires. Really tough to see, obviously, for the Camas side, and a team that seemed like they were on track for a state championship all year. But that's just how the game of football goes sometimes. And what a great just atmosphere to be in, and a game that was really, I think, a perfect ending to the season for a state championship.
Yeah, let's talk about that atmosphere a little more. This is the first time we have had a team from Southwest Washington reach the state championship game since they moved post-pandemic the state championships to Husky Stadium. In some of maybe the smaller classification title games, it looked a bit empty, but that lower bowl was packed. It looked like the entire town of Sumner showed up, as well as a good turnout for Camas.
Yeah, a lot of Rooter buses, I think, coming from both schools. And yeah, I thought, for how big that stadium is, I think it's like 70,000 seats. It seemed really full, like you said, in that lower bowl. And I think, I think it's better personally than a high school stadium and where it had been the past couple of years. I never got to see a game at the Tacoma Dome, so I can't compare it to that. But I thought it was a really good atmosphere, and it's pretty cool. You see a team like Camas coming out of the Husky Stadium locker room, the same locker room that UW players are from, and it's just a really cool thing. And I think it's a little bit more special to kind of at the end of the year, your reward is to get to play in a place where college players do. So that was a cool thing, I think.
Tim, why don't you give us your takeaway on just Camas's journey, their how they developed throughout the year, and what you saw from them in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I noticed from watching them against Skyview in week 9 to what they did in the postseason is they really turned on to the run game, and they depended on the run game, and that against Arlington and against Gonzaga Prep, where they just had some drives where they just ran the ball the whole time, because we knew Jake Davidson was really good and their passing game was really good, but they also showed that they could run that ball. It was a little bit more of a challenge against a really good Sumner team, so they had to mix it up a little bit. It's in a game when you lose on a last second field goal, there are opportunities galore where you can think, if this happened, if that happened. There was the fumble that went out of bounds on the last drive. There was the fumble inside the 5, the fake punt. I read in the Tacoma News Tribune that Sumner coach Keith Ross saw the Camas alignment, and he wanted to call the play off, and he couldn't do it in time, and they still got the first down. So there was a holding penalty on Camas's last offensive possession on a play where Jake Davidson looked like he was going to score a touchdown, or would have scored a touchdown. So many things that could have gone the other way. That's just the way it is on any close game like that, it's really a championship caliber season for Camas despite the final outcome. So.
And that's going to be one of the questions, is where would they go from here? And like I said in the opening of this point, I don't think certainly you could understand if Camas maybe took a small step back, being that now they have to replace a very talented senior class, including their starting quarterback. But with just the proven track record of Camas, kind of next man up, the way we saw that young offensive line develop, where you would have thought that maybe that would be a weak point this year, ended up actually turning into a bit of a strength. I think Camas is going to be back for more next year.
I think at the 4A level, it's really hard to repeat. I think Lake Stevens the last couple of years was kind of an outlier on that, just because there's so many teams that are ready to fill any sort of void or slip back and regroup. I think if you looked at the teams that we've seen from Southwest Washington here that have gone on to play in the championship game or win a championship game, we haven't seen the same team make it consecutively. We didn't see that from Evergreen in 2004 or Skyview in 2011. Camas, it was 2013, then 2016, and then 2019. So doing that consistently year in, year out at the 4A level is a bit of a challenge. But I like you said earlier, I think the paper makers will find new people to fill the voids, and they'll be competitive. They'll be vying for another league title next year. They'll be be able to make another playoff run, maybe put themselves in a position to make another run like this one.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a little bit of uncertainty around the rest of the 4A GSHL as well. When you look at like Skyview, we'll be bringing in a new coach next year. Union's still kind of trying to get on track with Steve Pine and company just coming off their first year. But yeah, I think it's tough to make consecutive deep playoff runs, especially at the 4A level, and especially when you look at some Camas teams of years past that, looked like they had it and then ran into, a buzzsaw in that state playoff bracket. But the cupboard is definitely not bare talent-wise, and they have a great coaching staff, so I expect them to be good again next year.
Well, that's a great segue into our second takeaway, and that is the door seems to be open for some other football teams to rise in the ranks, specifically those that have coaches with a proven track record of success that last year took over new programs. I'm thinking about Union and Steve Pine. I'm thinking about Mountain View and Sean McDonald. I'm thinking about Mark Morris and Mike Peck. First year, obviously, a lot of the energy is into going into teaching a new scheme, developing relationships, putting a coaching staff together, putting your routine in. Next year, those programs will be entering year 2 of their new coaches, and I think the door is open to see some improvements for those programs especially, but also for some others.
Yeah, I think when you look at Mark Morris, I think absolutely they'll be improved next year. I think Union is in the probably category as well. I would say Mountain View is a little bit wait and see, but let me just kind of go through this. I would say, first of all, with Mark Morris, they have 7 starters returning on both sides of the ball, including all 5 offensive linemen. I think they'll be improved, and I think they have a pretty sky high potential. I think their offense averaged around like 14 points this year, but I would expect them to be improved with Mike Peck at the helm. Union, I think it was a pretty young team this year as well, and man, they had just a really tough schedule to boot as well. I would expect Steve Pine and company to get them better than their 2-6 record this year. Mountain View, I'm gonna say wait and see, just because I think they have a pretty tough task of replacing an all senior offensive line. They're gonna be graduating some key skill players, guys like Jaden Brown, for example, but Sean McDonald is a proven winner everywhere he's been, and I think they'll be on a good track as well for years to come.
I think the door is also open for maybe some other programs with first-year coaches that maybe didn't have the spotlight on them. I'm thinking maybe Prairie, Junior Miller. They had a couple of games where they went toe-to-toe with some tough teams, and I think, the best out of some of their athletes. And then Fort Vancouver is always going to be a unique situation, but Will Ephraim there, I think, if it can come down to turnout, I think Fort could obviously play a presence kind of in the middle of that Trico League there if they're able to get some bodies out.
Yeah, and all the 3 programs with the first-year coaches that you mentioned earlier, I think Sean McDonald was the one who came in the latest into his position situation, and they also, last year's Mountain View team was way senior heavy, and so they were really kind of trying to maintain their level of success with a lot of new players in a lot of new places. So I think year 2, even though they do have some key players to replace, I think they've kind of got a system set up that they can move forward on that. So, the Mark Morris is interesting because late in the year they were having their success running the ball, which is not something you usually see Mike Peck do. I think against R.A. Lung, that's all they did was just run the ball. So I think once you kind of get into his, his spread, air attack, and you can mix in that running game with that returning line, that they can definitely take a step forward in the coming years. And I think the same thing with Union. It's kind of a rebuilding process, and it takes some time. And I think they're kind of building towards getting back into the mix and fighting for a league playoff spot.
All right. Well, there's always plenty to anticipate going ahead into the next football season, but that's way down the road. There's still more to kind of reflect on with this fall season that doesn't have anything to do with football, and we'll talk about maybe one of the more impressive showings across an entire sport, and that has been in girls soccer and the 2A Greater St. Helens League. Nothing has changed from the way that this area continues to dominate statewide, with Ridgefield and Columbia River both making it to the title game. Ridgefield knocking off the Rapids for their second straight state title at the 2A level. And I'm going to pose this question. Has Ridgefield taken over the throne in 2A girls soccer from Columbia River? As we know, Columbia River was sort of the preeminent program for the previous 5 to 7 years leading into Ridgefield's most recent run. But is it too early to crown the Spudders, being that Columbia River not only was right there with them in the state championship game, but the last 2 years, Columbia River, while not winning the state title, won the league title, ahead of the Spudders. Will, you were up at the state Final Four, so you've seen those teams more than anybody in this room. Is it too early to crown the Spudders, or are the Spudders the reigning queens of Southwest Washington soccer?
I'm going to say it's not too early to crown the Spudders. By winning back-to-back state championships, they did something that Columbia River hasn't done, despite winning 5 state titles in their program. To win back-to-back titles is a huge accomplishment. And if you go back to the state semifinals a year ago, Ridgefield has won 4 of the last 5 meetings against Columbia River. The only exception was the first time they played this season, but after that they won the second time in the regular season. They won the district title, and then they won in the state title. So I think obviously this crown is always up for grabs, and I would expect Columbia River to be improved next year. But for right now, in this moment, I think absolutely it is Ridgefield's crown.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with back-to-back state championships. I think it's worth, however, honoring just the year-after-year consistency of Columbia River, being that that program just has not taken a step back, consistently making it to at least the Final Four. I mean, I think it's like every year in the last 8 years, or 7 out of the last 8 years.
It's every year since they moved to 2A.
Every year since they moved to 2A.
Other than the pandemic year. So I mean, that's what you want to do. You want to put yourself in a position, and soccer is, it's a sport where it's, I mean, if you look at professional soccer leagues around the world, they typically don't have like a playoff system, an elimination system. It's usually just a standing, because it's you kind of find out who the good teams are through a full season, other than these elimination games, where things can happen, breaks can happen, and it can change. So that's what Columbia River's been able to do. They've been able to consistently be there every year and put themselves in a position. However, with Ridgefield being there and winning 2 state titles, and basically it's a testament to the league. I think we sit here and we look every year and we got to think, oh, this has got to be the year where the 2A GSHL did. I mean, they don't get anybody to the semifinals, or maybe they just get 1 or something like that. And then every year they're putting 2 teams, 3 teams, or someone's going and playing for a state title. It's like, I think it's a testament to the league as a whole, not just Ridgefield, not just River, but R.A. Long and Hawkinson and Washougal and everyone on down the line. They're all playing good soccer and kind of playing into just how good that league has been over the years.
Well, and I think both teams would be the first to say we kind of credit the other to elevating us to that level. I'm sure Ridgefield would say that we're as good as we are because we face Columbia River twice in league play and usually in district play. It's almost the perfect, and vice versa too. Now Columbia River, they can't just coast through their league and not get tested and then try to find a way to turn it on. I'm sure both programs will say that rising tide has certainly risen their boats.
Yeah, and I think it'll be the same thing again next year. And I think it'll be interesting because Columbia River has been a little bit on the young side these past couple of years, played a lot of freshmen and sophomores in key spots. But now they'll be a little bit more of a veteran team, whereas Ridgefield, I think, graduates 9 seniors. So it'll be a little bit of a flip. So it'll be interesting to see how things shake out next year.
All right. Let's go to volleyball. And one of the more impressive runs that we have seen any program make in state history is currently into its fourth year, and that would be Columbia River. They've now won 4 consecutive Class 2A state volleyball titles among schools Class 2A and larger. Only Meade, with their 5 consecutive titles, is longer. You have a current streak going at the 1A level with Chelan just having wrapped up its 5th consecutive state title. But the Rapids going into a tournament where they were not the number 1 seed, where they were probably picked by a lot of people statewide to not win this year, just shut out all the doubters. They wrote a great performance by senior Sydney Dreves, who is now a 4-time state champion. And when you count her tennis accolades, currently owns 7 state championships. She could end her senior year with 9 state championships, which is just unreal when you think about it. But it's a testament not only to obviously what Sydney Dreves, her sister Lauren Dreves, were able to accomplish over the last 4 years, but also to that program that Brianne Smedley has put in. She puts a huge emphasis on like mental preparation, visualization, goal setting, and plus some of the new players that have come in, thinking primarily Sophia Gorley, their excellent sophomore, who was one of the best players in the tournament this year. Columbia River just continues to impress the way they just go year after year being at the top of the game.
Yeah, I remember that day. I mean, we were coming back. I think we had covered some quarterfinal soccer matches that day, and we were in the office, and they were down. They were down, I think 2-1, and it didn't look real good. And then they came back and they won that 4th, and we're like, oh, they're still alive. And then they came back and they won it. It was almost like a surprise, which the last couple of years, not a surprise when they win. So this is probably the most impressive of their runs. It's just that they kind of came in as the underdog, and they still found a way to get it done.
I think the biggest thing probably you could say they lacked this year, aside from Sydney Dreves, is experience. But now the rest of that team has that. So I think that'll serve them well in the future. And like you said, it seems like there's perhaps no coach that understands the mental side and the mental preparation of the game better than Smedley. So, yeah, I think they'll continue to roll.
Well, it is almost a throwback to their first championship 4 years ago when they were sort of the underdog. And that was a team that certainly they had Riley Reeves as being the main hitter, but then you had a young ascendant player and then sophomore Lauren Dreves, and then Sydney Dreves as a freshman on that team. They were probably the underdog going into that state championship match against Ridgefield, which they ended up winning. I think they had a dramatic comeback and rallied from several points down to kind of steal one of those sets and sort of set the tone. Then 2 or 3 years ago, they win in dominating fashion. Last year, they win in dominating fashion. And then this year, they were actually up against facing a championship point. Ellensburg was up by 2 points in the 4th set, 1 point away from winning the state championship and ending Columbia River's reign. But Columbia River gets 3 points in a row to steal that 4th set, then runs away with the 5th set tiebreaker. And here we are still talking about the Rapids 4 years in a row.
Crazy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, for Sydney Dreves as an individual to come away 4-time state champion, that's something really special.
It's rare in any sport.
Yeah,
it just goes to show that level of consistency and talent that certainly she has as an individual, but also that program and how dialed in that program is. All right, let's end with, we talked about Camas making the state football championship game. There was another local team there, Seton Catholic, making their first Class 1A state championship football game. And I think my takeaway certainly for this fall, but also beyond this fall, is now I think Seton Catholic is firmly established to be a multi-sport small school power for the foreseeable future. I think that has to do some with the inherent advantage that a private school has, being able to draw from the entire area and not be limited by a stricter school boundary. But also I think you've just seen a commitment among the administration at that school to prioritize athletic success. And so you see that happened not just in football, but in boys basketball. They made a run with last year in the state tournament, and certainly I don't think are going anywhere, being that they have almost everybody back this year, including a kid I'm sure we'll talk about a lot this winter, and sophomore Caden Wilson, who might be one of the best players in the area. But also you've seen the baseball team have success, you've seen girls soccer have success, and then you've seen a lot of good individual athletes come through in recent years. So I think it wasn't that long ago we were sort of talking about Seton Catholic as kind of the new kids on the block and trying to establish what they do. But now I think Seton Catholic will be a consistent presence every year, every season.
Yeah, I think that's what we kind of talked about. The boys soccer team made the state semifinals a couple years back. It's like the first time they made the state semifinals, and so now the football team, they made the semifinals last year, and now they made their first championship game. So yeah, it's you kind of expect the Seton Catholic will come out of the Trico either with a league title or onto a playoff spot in whatever sport they play. The baseball team last year had a heartbreaking finish in the quarterfinals, but they bring back most of their team back this year. And then the fast pitch softball team made a run to the state championship game. Always seems to run into Royal at the end. It's always Royal, and that football program at Royal is just. It's crazy the level of success that they've been able to do over the last few years. But I think on Saturday I was watching it from home. I was impressed with Seton's grit to come back and rally and make it a tie game at halftime. That fourth down aiding the runner play on the run by Joe Colorado. That was tough. And doubly tough because I don't think he actually needed to be aided when he was aided. But I think if they can get that, they can keep him in it, and then they Royals able to turn the field. But yeah, just I think the run, the level of success that they've been able to do when they step on the court, field, or whatever has been impressive here in recent years, and it looks like it's going to be continuing in the future.
It's just crazy like how fast their ascent has been in several sports, and even football, one year to the next, and the improvement they showed facing Royal in back-to-back years. But I feel like even, a big part of it too is just, some of their kind of younger classes have kind of grown a little bit too. I mean, I remember coming in here in the late fall of 2021, and it seemed like a lot of their rosters were just filled with freshmen and sophomores across the board. And now, you kind of start to see these programs gain experience. They have big upperclassmen classes in addition to younger classes coming in. And then I think another part of it is just some really good coaches. Like you look at somebody like Antonio Buckley, for example, in their soccer program, someone who's been there, I think, since 2020 and has turned both programs around and has really made an investment in staying for a long time and developing players. And I think it's part of the reason why you're just seeing some really kind of fast rising programs over at Seton.
Well, I think that you need to give a tip of the cap, obviously, to the continuity and the administration there, too. I think Phil Kent has been there since day one. And so to be able to kind of have that vision, we see it in our Athlete of the Week contest that they probably have one of the more organized and well-equipped booster clubs of any. I mean, that kind of goes with the territory when you're talking about a private school there, but they certainly do that job of theirs very well. But I think that's a well-taken point, Will, in that we're seeing kind of the culmination of a multi-year process with this class of 2025 that has come through.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, those are our takeaways for the fall sports season, but we are just heading headlong into the winter season. We're going to be back next week, however, to sort of crown our fall season with the revealing of our all-region football team. I think that was the most popular episode we recorded last year, so be sure to tune in to find out which of the football players from our area made our all-region teams. But then we're going to head into the holidays. We're going to come up with a lot of different angles to cover during the winter season: basketball, wrestling. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll look forward to seeing kind of how that emerges. So as always, thank you for following us on 360 Preps. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.